Title: The Seeds of Jealousy. It was a bright morning in the small town of Ekanbi, a typical Nigerian rural community where everyone knew each other. Amina, a single mother of two, hurriedly prepared her children for school. Her eldest, Sei, was 10 years old and always eager to help, while her younger daughter, Bimp, aged 7, loved to cling to her mother's side. The house was small but filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of freshly made yam porridge. "Mommy, don't forget my school project," Sei called out, waving a paper in the air. Amina smiled but was clearly tired. She had been up late sewing clothes to sell at the market to make ends meet. Life was tough, but her children made every challenge worth it. Meanwhile, across the street lived Madame Ronki, a wealthy widow who had lost her husband years ago. Unlike Amina, she had no children to fill her large house with life. Each day, she watched Amina's household with growing bitterness. As Amina stepped outside, holding Bimpei's hand and watching Sei skip ahead, she felt someone staring. She turned and met the cold gaze of Madame Ronki. The older woman stood by her gate, dressed in an expensive lace blouse and wrapper, her head held high, but her face wore a permanent frown. "Amina, you should control your children," Madame Ronki snapped, gesturing at Sei, who had almost bumped into her. "They run around as if they own the street." Amina forced a smile. "Sei is just excited to get to school. I'll speak to him." Madame Ronki's lips tightened, and Amina sensed the familiar tension. It had always been there, ever since her husband died, leaving her with wealth but no heirs. As Amina led her children away, Madame Ronki muttered under her breath, "Some people have all the luck." Later that day, at the local market, Amina laid out her handmade clothes. Business was slow, but she was patient, hoping for a sale. As she adjusted her goods, she overheard a conversation among the market women. "Have you heard? Madame Ronki is angry again. She says Amina's children are too noisy," one woman whispered to another. "She's just jealous. You know she always wanted kids," another replied. "But instead of being kind, she's always complaining." Amina's heart sank. She had always been polite to Madame Ronki, despite the woman's attitude. She hadn't realized just how deep the jealousy ran. Could this be why Ronki had been so cold? The day passed without much event, but on their way home, an incident occurred. Sei, as usual, was running ahead of his mother, while Bimp walked beside her. Suddenly, they heard Madame Ronki shouting, "Stop that child, he just kicked dirt all over my new dress." Amina's heart raced as she looked up to see Sei standing still, confused and frightened, while Madame Ronki stormed towards them, fuming. "Madam, I'm so sorry," Amina began, rushing forward to shield her son. "He didn't mean to." "Of course he didn't mean to," Ronki snapped, "but it's because you let them run wild. Just because you have children doesn't mean you can let them disrespect others." Her voice was filled with venom. A crowd had started to gather, curious market-goers and neighbors watching the confrontation. Amina felt embarrassed but stayed calm. "I'll speak to him," she said softly, taking Sei's hand. But Madame Ronki wasn't done. "If you had taught them better manners, maybe they wouldn't act like street children. No father, no discipline, that's what happens." The crowd gasped at Madame Ronki's harsh words. Amina felt the sting of shame but also anger rising within her. She had worked hard to raise her children with love, without the support of a husband, and now this woman was attacking her family. "Madame Ronki, I understand you're upset," Amina began, her voice steady but firm. "But I won't stand here and let you insult me or my children. We're doing the best we can." Ronki looked shocked. No one had ever spoken back to her before. "You think I care about your struggles? You're just a nobody who—" "Enough." A voice rang out from the crowd, and to Amina's surprise, it was one of the market women, Mama Teo. "Leave her alone, Ronki. She has more heart than you'll ever have, even with all your money." Others nodded in agreement, murmuring in support of Amina. Embarrassed, Madame Ronki huffed and stormed off, her head held high but her pride clearly wounded. That evening, as Amina sat with her children, the house was quiet. Sei was unusually silent, guilt heavy on his mind. "I didn't mean to upset Madame Ronki, Mommy," he whispered. "I'm sorry." Amina hugged him tightly. "I know, my dear. It wasn't your fault." Later, as the children slept, Amina sat alone by the window, looking out into the night. She wondered if things would ever change between her and Madame Ronki, if the older woman's jealousy would ever fade. In Madame Ronki's large house, the widow sat by herself, staring into the darkness. Despite her harsh words, there was a part of her that envied Amina, not just for her children, but for the love and support that surrounded her. Perhaps one day, Madame Ronki thought, she would find peace. But tonight, the bitterness remained, lingering in the silence of her empty home. This story captures the tension between Amina, a hardworking single mother, and Madame Ronki, a jealous widow, in a small Nigerian town.